in life, how do you score? I mean, when it comes to athletics and sports, basketball, football, all the players are doing whatever they can to score points, to win. But it can be hard to win if you don't know how to score. We all want to get ahead in life. We all want to win, but it seems like everybody's playing with a different scorecard. Today, Pastor Eric's going to be talking about how we really get ahead and how we can have the best scorecard in life. Welcome to SMCC Online. Before we dive into today's message, I want to take a second to introduce myself. My name's TC. I'm the campus pastor at our Lehigh location here at SMCC. And the things that have been happening at Lehigh over these last few weeks have been incredible. We've had a lot of fun events that have brought people in from our community. We've seen some of the most attendance we've had in the last year and seen a lot of new families get connected at our church. And because of all those new families, we've had to expand and add to our team. And so I want to introduce to you our new next gen pastor on the Lehigh staff. This is Cam Henderson, brand new to Utah. He's been here like 10 days, came here from Hawaii. And so a lot of people are probably wondering, like, why would you move to Utah from Hawaii? So what brought you to the SMCC team?
Yeah, so my wife and I, from the island of Oahu. She's from there. I only lived there for 2 years, so I can't say I'm a local. However, we came from there, and while we were there, we heard all these great things about SMCC, and so we wanted to come and see if those things were true. And when we showed up, we did see that those things, in fact, were real.
We didn't trick you.
You didn't trick us. No, you did not. However, there was a specific moment in time when we realized that this was a place that we really, really wanted to be. And it was a night where we were swooned with desserts, fancy desserts.
Fancy desserts sealed the deal.
But it was the people, right? We were surrounded by all of these volunteers and people who have invested time here at SMCC. And these are people who are just giving freely of themselves to serve others and to create this environment where people can come and experience Christ's love. And it was this moment in time where people could come and ask us all these questions. And
they asked a lot of questions.
They did ask a ton of questions. And there were questions that made us sweat. There were some really difficult questions. However, it was in these questions that we started to realize the DNA of SMCC and what people at SMCC really value, right? And we began to realize that here at SMCC, we weren't just going to be, if we took this position, we weren't just going to be overseeing childcare at SMCC, right? It wasn't a place where people just dropped off their kids so they could go sit in church. We were going to be partnering with families in ministry. People really love and value their children here because they want them to know Jesus, right? They want them to know who God is. And that was something that we got really excited about. Because we're going to be doing ministry with families, right? And so we really wanted to be a part of that. And it was after that night that we knew this is where we wanted to be.
That's so cool, man. I remember when me and Cody came here several months ago, our prayer was that we would come to the church, that our daughter would fall in love with Jesus. She's just 2. And so, man, we saw that SMCC was that church, and then we saw you as the guy to help make that happen at the Lehigh campus. So welcome to Utah, welcome to SMCC. We're glad you're here, man. And now we are going to jump into the next week in our series, A Journey to Joy with Pastor Eric.
Welcome again to SMCC. I'm Eric. I get to serve as one of the pastors here. Special welcome to everybody at the Draper location this morning. I hope you're well. Over the last few weeks, I've been teaching my kids how to play Scrabble. They've been learning how to play Scrabble. It's been a whole lot of fun. They can learn to count, spell, and create all at the same time. I'm one of those dads that has to have a lesson behind all fun. It's a bit obnoxious. But my youngest son, Jack, he doesn't quite understand how the scoring is supposed to work. He'll spell a word. He loves this word. He loves to spell the word poo and give himself 30 points. And I have to say to him, buddy, that's not how it works. Let's just say my kids like to score in a way that I don't like to score the game. They're not really scoring accurately when it comes to Scrabble. And then just a few weeks ago, my wife and I were watching football. It was a bit of a miracle to get us both together on the couch for a football game. And she doesn't exactly know how they keep score either. The Patriots kicked an extra point, and my wife said, "Oh, so they got 3 more." Men, have you ever experienced this form of torture before? She doesn't quite understand it. But men, come on, have you ever picked up a 5-foot putt and gave it to yourself as a gimme? Come on, you know how to fudge the numbers as well. Listen, in life, we're all keeping score in many areas of life. Let me ask you a question about yours. In life, how do you measure your score? I know it's a bit of a strange question, but we all have a way of knowing how we're doing in life. We all have a way to measure our worth or our score, our value in life. And culture often measures our worth in a few specific ways. Culture says measure your worth by your net worth, measure your value by your net worth or your home's worth or your car's worth or your spouse's worth or your kid's worth or your business's worth or something like that. But here's what I find very, very interesting. When it comes to our worth in life or our score in life, it's always connected to a system in life. What I mean is this: a score is always based on a scoring system. It's this way with football, it's this way with Scrabble, it's this way with golf, and it's this way with our lives. Our score in life or our worth in life is always connected to a system in which we see the world. And another way to talk about a system is to talk about a standard or a set of rules or a law. And this is interesting, and everybody lives under some sort of law, some sort of approach to know how they're doing in life. And then our worth is based on how well we adhere to that law. So it's not just my actions that give me my value in life, it's how my actions come into alignment with the system or the law that really governs the way that I see the world. Let me give you just a few examples. Here's one system. It's the system of irreligion. And in irreligion, it's I choose my system, and based on my performance, I get a score. So I choose the system or the standard or the set of rules or laws that govern my life, and then my score in life is based on how well I perform inside of the system I chose for myself. So for example, if I choose fun as the system that governs my life, my score in life, my value in life is connected to how much fun I'm having in my life. If I choose pleasure as the system or the standard or the rule or the law for which governs my life, then my worth in life is based on how many pleasurable experiences I have in life. See, my worth is not just connected to my performance, it's how well I'm performing in alignment with my law. You get this. Here's another system. It's the system of religion this time. And in religion, a church chooses a system. And based on my performance, I get a score. So an organization, they set the standard, they set the rules, they set the laws, and then I get a score from them based on how well I'm adhering to their law. So when it comes to our score in life and measuring our worth and our value in life, our score is always connected to a scoring system. Our worth is always connected to a set of values or a law or a set of rules that really govern the way that we see the world. But the common thread between these systems, the system of irreligion or the system of religion, is this: it's our performance that gives us our worth. It's the common thread through an irreligious life and a religious life. It's performance that really drives our worth. Now, here's what's so fascinating and interesting and worth paying attention to. If your value is earned by your performance, then your value can be lost by your performance. Just like in fantasy football, where values are always changing, where the rating is always changing, if it's your performance that gives you your score, then your worth and your value and your score will constantly be changing based on how well you are doing. And this is not the best pathway to joy. This is not the right approach if you want to journey to joy. There's actually a better way. It's called the gospel. And so welcome again to our series, A Journey to Joy. And in this series, we've been talking about just that. How do we have joy in life? And the goal is joy for as many people as possible. As many people as possible in the state of Utah, as many people as possible who connect with SMCC. That's our goal. And we think today's message might be the most important message in this series. Because today we are talking about how to decide, how to make a decision that really changes the course of our lives. Today we're talking about a better way to joy. In fact, the best way to joy. We are talking about the best way to score your life. And this way, it comes to us from the Bible. And if you're not a Bible person, you're not a God person or a church person, when you hear me say that, you think, oh brother, really? Like the Bible? But listen, this third way that comes to us from the Bible, not the way of religion, not the way of irreligion, but the way of the gospel, it's a way that you should investigate regardless of what you believe. Because if it is the best way and it's a true way, then we should seriously consider embracing it. And by the way, if the way you're scoring your life right now hasn't been working for you, then you should pay careful attention to what the New Testament communicates about this third way, a better way, the best way to score your life, because it's a way that results in joy. So in the New Testament, there's a small letter written by the Apostle Paul to a group of Jesus followers in the city of Rome. And here in this letter, Romans chapter 3, Paul begins to write, of course, everything he's writing coming from God about this third way, a way to joy, a way to score your life. And we read this in Romans chapter 3. He says, but now, apart from the law, this is very important, apart from the law, the righteousness of God has been made known, to which the law and the prophets, looking back to the Old Testament, the law and the prophets testify. Now, you might think this has very little to do with your life, but this is the starting place for understanding this new approach to scoring your life. It's apart from the law. See, here's a quick definition of law. A law is a system that leads to an outcome. A system that leads to an outcome. And like we've already said, we all have some laws that govern the way we see the world. I mean, don't be a jerk, don't offend anybody, just love. I mean, those are very common approaches to how we see the world. For many people, that's the law they have. Just be kind, just be loving, treat others how you want to be treated. Whatever it is, people have a law that governs the way they see the world. These are all very common approaches. And what's important as we think about these approaches, whether they're a secular approach, a secular law, a religious law, a moral law, a cultural law, the thing about these laws that's so important is that they tell us how we can be right. They tell us how we can be all right in the world. I know I'm all right because I've lived up to the law. I know I'm all right. I know I'm okay. I know I'm a valuable person. I know I'm scoring well because I'm adhering to this law. Now, when this was written, the Jewish community looked back to the Old Testament law as their way to a rightness in life. See, we all want to live with this idea that we're all right, this rightness in life. And so for a Jew in the first century, they looked back to the Old Testament law as that standard that really governed their rightness in life. And because this rightness was connected to their relationship with God, it was called righteousness. And righteousness was the thing that made you a fit for closeness to God. I want to define righteousness today in the message in a bit of a unique way. Righteousness is the score that makes you right with God. The score that makes you right with God. And so if it was according to a law, it was according to your performance. I mean, righteousness was based on how well you performed inside of this Old Testament Jewish law system. But the Apostle Paul says something very important in Romans 3. It was a showstopper to all the Jewish readers. This new way of rightness with God or righteousness, it was available apart from the law. And he's beginning to unravel all that they knew about being right in the world, all that they knew about righteousness and living a life that really had a score that said, I am somebody and I'm valuable. He's unraveling what they knew by saying it's apart from the law, because if it's apart from the law, it's apart from your performance. So at this point in Romans, and the Apostle Paul is saying this, and I want us to see this, the way to score your life has changed. The way to score your life has changed. That's what the Apostle Paul is saying to the listeners in Rome. It's what he's saying to us. Look, if you want to score your life based on your performance to an irreligious law, if you want to score your life based on your performance to a religious law, that's not the pathway to joy. There's a new approach apart from the law. The way to score your life has fundamentally changed. To which we would, of course, say, okay, how should we do it now? What's it based on now? How do we score our lives now? The Apostle Paul goes there next. He says this in Romans 3, verse 22. He says, this righteousness, the score that makes us close to God, this score that makes us right with God, it is given through faith. Not performance, not your work, not your effort. It's given by faith in Jesus Christ to all who believe, There's no difference between Jew and Gentile. Once again, another showstopper. He says, for all have sinned. That's the common thread. We've talked about this over the last few weeks. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. So the rightness with God that Paul is talking about, it's not earned because it can't be earned because we all fall short. We are all broken by sin. So the score that makes us right with God, it's not based on our performance. It's not based on what a Jew has done, not based on what a Gentile has done. It's now based on faith. And by faith, the Apostle Paul is not thinking belief without evidence. By faith, he's simply saying trust. Now, the rightness with God that people have been after, this idea of scoring your life in a way that counts, it's connected to trust. So it means this, your score in life is not based on what you do, it's based on who you trust. So this means a few things. First, it means because it's not based on your performance any longer, you can have a worth in life that's not based on how well you're doing or how bad you're doing. We can't earn our way in, and therefore we can't perform our way out. It's not based on our performance. It's apart from a law. It's based on faith. But the second thing this means is that we need to trust somebody wisely. We need to trust the one who is able to make us right with God, and that's Jesus. And that's what the Apostle Paul goes on to explain here in Romans 3. He says, and all are justified. We're going to talk about that word, justified freely. It's a gift. Justified freely on what grounds? By his grace. It's not our performance any longer. It's his goodness. It's his grace. Through the redemption, that's a very important word. It has marketplace connotations. There was a buyback that took place through the redemption that came by Christ Jesus. God presented Christ as a sacrifice of atonement. Atonement means to satisfy a demand. So Christ's sacrifice satisfied the demand of justice through the shedding of his blood to be received by, and he goes back to the word, by faith. So there is a new way to justify your life, a brand new way to score your life, a brand new way to know that you are all right in this world. And it's justification by faith through Jesus. So a definition for justification today is this right here. It's the gift. It's the gift of a right standing with God. So Jesus paid for us. This is the idea of redemption. He paid for us with his life. That's how much we are worth. Therefore, our value can be scored based upon what he has done, not upon what we do. So religion is justification by strict obedience to some law, some religious law. It's based on performance. And irreligion is justification by strict adherence to a different set of laws. But the gospel is justification for free because Jesus obeyed the law that we couldn't obey perfectly. He obeyed it perfectly, and therefore we can stand in a right relationship with God because of what Jesus has done. See, according to Romans 3, righteousness is not something we have to prove that we have and then give it to God. Righteousness is something that Jesus had, and then he gives that righteousness to us. Jesus' record becomes ours. It's his record that's placed into our account. Our sinful record was placed onto him. That's when he shed his blood on the cross. And his perfect record is now placed upon us, and we stand righteous. We have this gift of a right standing with God through this exchange. He took what we deserve. We receive what only he deserved. So righteousness is not something we pay out of our account. It's something that God places into our account. And this is different than forgiveness, by the way, because forgiveness takes something out of our lives. Justification places something into our lives. Forgiveness says, you may go, no longer guilty. Justification says, you may come, you're accepted here. Forgiveness is get out of jail. Justification is welcome home. It's you may come. Now, last week, we went to Disney for the first time as a family. The Nelsons went to Disney. I know many of you love Disney. I saw some of you at Disney, and we had a great trip. I mean, people love it there, and we had just a great time. I went on some scary rides. I'll tell you what the scariest ride at Disneyland is. It's not the new Guardians of the Galaxy ride. I mean, that ride is amazing, and I found it a little scary, but the scariest ride is the bus shuttle home to the hotel at the end of the day. That is a scary ride. I don't know if you've been on the bus. I mean, it's packed wall to wall with people. You're not sure if a fight's gonna break out. The bus driver's slamming on the brakes. I mean, that is an adventure. That is a scary ride. And also, I'll tell you, the most entertaining attraction for the people at the park, I mean, it wasn't the new Avengers campus. It was watching my kids fight in line. I mean, they fought the whole time. I'm telling you, people were more entertained by that than anything at Disney. But there's this new ride at Disney, the Rise of the Resistance. I don't know if you've seen this ride. They say it's the most technologically advanced ride ever. And so, of course, as you can imagine, the line is massive. I mean, it's hours and hours long. And so my wife and I and the kids, we get in line for Rise of the Resistance, and it broke down, or something happened, it shut down. And so we had to walk back out of the line. But as we're walking out, one of the workers, they call themselves cast members, one of the cast members pulls us aside and says, hey, let me see the app, let me see your ticket. So I get my phone out and I get the ticket out, and she zaps something into our ticket, and I'm not sure what she just did, what she imputed or imparted into my ticket. I've never been to Disney before, and she just says, hey, just come back in a few hours. So we come back a few hours later, and I get on my ticket and I say, I don't really know what this means, but here's what's been placed into my account, you know. She put something on our ticket, and she said, oh, follow me. And there's this massive line of people, but we now had a fast pass. And so we get in the fast pass line, which is like technically closed down, but we somehow got one, and we just go right to the front, and we're giggling the whole way because we can't believe this is true. And we get all the way to the front, and they say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Nelson, welcome to the Rise of the Resistance, and we walk right onto the ride. You guys, we will be talking about that forever. We will never forget that. Because of what she did with our ticket, she justified our experience on the ride. I didn't earn that. I don't even think I deserved that. But we had justification for the experience because of what she placed into our account. Our experience on the ride was justified because of what someone else placed into my account. And this is a picture of justification. Jesus, his perfect record placed in our account. Now we can walk into an experience of a relationship with God. It's justification for free because of our trust. It's not based on what we've done. It's based on who we trust. We can't earn our way in, therefore we can't perform our way out. It is justification for free forever because of what Jesus has done. What I'm saying is this: Jesus' score with God becomes ours. If forgiveness is get out of jail, justification is welcome home. And Jesus' score with God becomes ours. And that score can never change. And by the way, the requirement is perfection. And because Jesus was sinless, his sinless, perfect record becomes ours. Wow. This is a brand new way to score our lives. Justification, not because of what we've done, but because of what Jesus has already done. It's based on trust, and it's freely given. Forgiveness takes something out of our lives. Justification places righteousness into our lives. And if you've trusted Jesus, this is true of you. and is true of me. Now, some of you are listening and you're saying, Eric, hold on. I mean, that sounds great, but come on. You're giving people a pass. Like, does this mean we don't have to live a good life anymore? I mean, doesn't this undercut good living? I mean, if I'm in forever and nothing can change that, then why would anybody desire to live a good life at all? I understand that tension, and I want to deal with that tension next. I mean, if this sounds too easy, I want to talk about something very specific. I want to read to you something that will make what I'm saying sound like a contradiction. I want to read to you something from the New Testament that sounds like a contradiction to what we just read from the New Testament, but I want to show you the beauty in this paradox and how they both come together. In the New Testament book of James, James says this. He says, "Was not our ancestor Abraham considered righteous for what he did?" Okay, hold on. I mean, if you read Paul and then you read James, you think this is the contradiction in the Bible that I can't stand. I mean, this is why I can't trust the Bible. It's full of contradictions. Paul says it's justification for free. James is saying, hey, he was declared righteous because of what he did. Which one is it? Well, let's keep reading. Offering his son Isaac on the altar. That's what he did. Verse 22, you see that his faith and his actions were working together, and his faith was made complete by what he did. And scripture was fulfilled that says, Abraham believed God and it was credited to him as righteousness. Believed or trusted, and it was righteousness credited. And he was called God's friend. And look at this next part. This is the part that seems like a glaring contradiction until we understand it in context. You see that a person is justified by what he does and not by faith alone. Wow, this seems like a problem. I mean, James says we're justified by work. Paul says we're justified by faith. And some of you say, this is the problem that I have with the Bible. I mean, the Bible is contradicting itself. Both of these ideas cannot be true at the same time, can they? Is Paul correct or is James correct? How can we reconcile this? Well, we can reconcile this by asking more questions. We can ask more questions like, what's the context of James? What's the context in Paul? In Romans. We could ask more questions like, what does the word justification mean? Is there more than one meaning in the word? And then which meaning is James using and which meaning is Paul using? If we press in just a little bit, we would discover they're both talking about justification, but they're talking about it in two different ways, in two different contexts. See, let me explain. There's two meanings of the word justify, two meanings of justify. The first means to pay off a debt and make right. The second means to demonstrate that you are right. The first means to pay off a debt. The second means to demonstrate that the debt's been paid. And I think the best way to illustrate this is by talking about Costco. Some of you love Costco. Some of you love it a little bit too much. When I go to Costco, I don't understand how the bill when I walk up to the register is as much as it is. I mean, I always seem to spend far more than I expected when I go to Costco. Maybe this is true of you. So what happens when you get to Costco is you pull up to the register and you have to pay off what's in the cart. You have to pay off the debt. I mean, you're about to incur a debt. You're going to take this out of the store. You have to pay off the debt. This is the first sense of the word justify. But here's what happens next at Costco, and this is always interesting. You have to get in that long line that heads out of the store. There's that worker there at the end, and they look at your receipt, and they check it off as if they even look to do the audit. I mean, they don't even check. I don't know what kind of work they're doing. Apparently, people are just trying to load up carts and book it out of Costco. I'm not quite sure what's going on. But here's what happens. You show them the receipt, and the receipt justifies to them that you're justified at the register. This over here with the person at the door, it demonstrates you're justified. The receipt demonstrates that you're justified. The payment actually does the justification. See, what I'm talking about is really two-way justification. At the register, you pay off the debt, making things right with the owner of Costco. At the door, you demonstrate that you are right with the worker at Costco. We have a horizontal approach to justification, and we have a horizontal approach to justification and a vertical approach to justification. One is I'm right this way. The other demonstrates that I'm right this way. So justification can mean two things. So we have to ask, which meaning does Paul have and which meaning does James have? Well, we could figure that out simply by looking at the context. In the context of James is horizontal relationships. He's talking about relationships with all the people in our lives. But the context of Paul is a vertical relationship with God. And vertical justification happens for free by faith. But horizontal justification, it's demonstrated in how we live. It's based on, with others, how we live our lives. You could call it our work. So both ideas are true. We live on two planes, the vertical plane and the horizontal plane. Our justification with God is passive. It's something that we simply receive. Our justification with others is active. It's in how we live. This is the payment. This is the receipt. So here's how we solve the tension. Paul tells us how true salvation is produced. James tells us what it actually produces, what true salvation produces. And you might say, Eric, why does it have to be this complicated? I'm glad that it is. And here's why. Paul is preventing salvation from being perverted by the religious, by saying, here's what you have to do to be right with God. But James is preventing salvation from being perverted by the rebellious, those who would say, it doesn't matter how you live because you're right here. James is guarding against one error, Paul is guarding against another, and by the way, we lean one way or the other, religious or rebellious. We need both of these ideas. One is guarding against, since I'm justified, I can do whatever I want. And the other is, if I want to be justified, I better start working. James and Paul, we need them both. So God doesn't need your good work, but your neighbor does. God doesn't need your good work, but your neighbor does. And so works, they don't earn true faith. They simply evidence true faith. And this is important to understand. Works are not the substance of your faith. They're the evidence of your faith. So I just want to talk for a moment to those listening who are here today who would identify as Jesus followers. There's this temptation at times that I've observed. I've seen it in others and I've seen it in my own life. To think this, well, since I'm right here, I can maybe mistreat people here. Since I'm good vertically, it doesn't really matter how I live with people horizontally. And unfortunately, this produces Christians who are just flat out jerks. Christians who might be right theologically, but who are just wrong when it comes to how they treat people. Come on, if what we have with God, a secure relationship with Him forever, is something we've received, then we can treat others with the same type of grace that we've been treated with. We can gift others with the love that's been gifted to us. And so, come on, this is an invitation and really a challenge to Jesus followers to not be the type of people who think, because I'm right with God, it doesn't really matter how I treat people right here. No, you were justified here because of the work of Jesus, but are you justified here with others because of how you work around them, how you live around them? See, the New Testament is telling us this. If you've been justified with God because of faith, you are fine with Him. You're good with Him. And the rest of the New Testament is saying, but here's how you live good with others. It's not, hey, here's a set of rules so you get right with God. That's not the New Testament. It's because you're right with God, here's how you should treat others. It's not, here's how you should live so you can stay in God's love. No, it's because you have experienced God's love, here's how you should live and love others. And when we can understand the New Testament in light of vertical justification and horizontal justification, it changes how we live. It changes how we score our life. And it changes how we influence other people's lives as well. Now, I want to get back to Romans and wrap up this section. The Apostle Paul says this, where then is boasting? It's excluded. I mean, if it's not based on your performance, you don't need to boast in how good you are, how spiritual you are. It's excluded. He says, because of what law? The law that requires works? No, because of the law that requires faith. See, irreligion is I choose a system or a law for my life. Religion is some church or organization chooses a law or system for my life. But the gospel says God has chosen how salvation works. And therefore, my score in life is based on what Jesus has done, not what I do. So, I want to talk about how we receive this. Because if we know what it is, that's one thing, but we need to receive what it is next. And saving faith, I think, has three parts to it. And if you've been tracking with us in this series, you might think, Eric, I'm leaning in. I mean, I see this approach to joy. How do I make it my approach to life? I think there's 3 very simple things that we can embrace right now. Perhaps right now, for the first time, you can embrace these 3 things and say yes to this approach to joy, this approach to scoring your life, which really is saying yes to Jesus and placing your faith in him. Here's the first. They all start with C, so you can remember them. The first is content. I know what was promised to me. I know what God has done for me. I know what was promised to me. Justification for free because righteousness was placed into my account. Not my righteousness, but Jesus's that's now a part of my record, and it makes me right with God. I know what was promised to me. Here's the next part, conviction. I trust those promises are for me. It was for me. So now I place my confidence in all that he's done. That's the third part, confidence. I will live according to that promise. So I know what was promised to me. I have conviction that the promises are for me. And now I'm going to base my life confidently on all of those promises. I'm going to live that way. Have you done that? You can do that now. You can do that as the service continues. But this is the best way to score your life that I've ever heard of. And you're in a room of people who would agree with that. The Apostle Paul 2,000 years ago agrees with that. He's the one that shared that with us, that there's a way to score your life, not based on our performance, but on Jesus's. And it's his score with God that becomes ours. And therefore, we can live with assurance. You know, as I observe life has taught me something. We all need assurance for how we're doing and that we're all right. I mean, insecure people need a lot of assurance, and we're all insecure. My kids have demonstrated this to me. I mean, they like to say this. Perhaps we're swimming in a pool. Dad, are you sure it's safe? We're riding bikes, trying to learn how to ride bikes. Dad, are you sure I can do that? At Disney even, roller coasters. Dad, are you sure? My kids know they need assurance from Dad, and if Dad is sure, they can live with assurance. And it's the same for us. If God is sure, we can have assurance too. And this moves us from being people who say things like, man, I hope I'm enough. I hope so. I hope I'm saved. To this, no, I know so. So should you live to 90 years old, long, rich life, and you're on your deathbed, and you're thinking to yourself, what happens next? Have I been enough? Have I been good enough? Have I done enough? I always could have done more. I'm just not sure. When you are unsure, you can be reminded of what Jesus has done. He has done enough on your behalf. And therefore, because God is sure, we can all live right now with assurance of our salvation. This is moving us from I hope so to I know so. We can have comfort, full confidence that Jesus fulfilled the requirements of God's law on our behalf, and therefore our verdict is righteous. So here's the bottom line in today's message. When you measure your worth by the work of Christ, you will have an immeasurable amount of joy. See, we want to find a way to score our lives and measure our lives. But when we measure our lives by our own performance, we will never be enough. When we measure our lives based upon what Jesus has done, it will lead to an immeasurable amount of joy. This is how we can experience joy lasting in our lives. Now, I brought with me real quick as we wrap up this scorecard. I keep this scorecard around from my best round of golf ever, you guys. Paul Roby was there, our lead pastor, to witness it. I shot 68. I was with my friends John and Becky, perhaps there at Draper this morning. It was the best round of golf ever, and I keep this scorecard around because every so often I glance at it and it reminds me of that day. See, here's the thing. We need to look to something to remind ourselves of our value and our worth. And of course, in my life, I would not look to a scorecard in golf to measure my life. That would be foolish. But here's what we can look to. On the days that you're trying to look to something to measure your worth and to score your life, you can score your life based on the cross. You can look at that and you can measure your life and score your life based on what Jesus has already done. The cross is our scorecard for our worth in life. Through what Jesus did there, we know that we are justified freely. Our sinful record placed on him, his perfect record placed on us. We now stand in a right relationship with God, and it's a gift. So, how do you score your life? What system have you placed over your life? What system gives you the score in life that you have right now? I want to invite you today to score your life based on the gospel. Would you pray with me? Jesus, today we get to take a close look at how we measure our lives. We're all measuring our lives by something, and there's some of us here who are very confident in our score. There's some of us here who are saying, I need a better score. And I pray today that our approach to scoring our lives, if it's the approach of irreligion or religion, would begin to unravel so that we can actually score our lives based on the gospel, which is this: Jesus, your score that becomes ours. And because your score is perfect, your sinless record can be imputed to us. We can have a right standing with God that gives us assurance of salvation forever. And therefore, with that assurance, we can live and love other people, and that we can justify our lives to them. That's not the substance of our faith. That good work is the evidence of our faith. So Jesus, help us have great confidence in you because of what you've done. Help us step across the line today to place our confidence in you, to trust you, to receive salvation, perhaps for the first time. And then help us this week live in a way where we demonstrate what we've received from you. Jesus, thank you that you paid off our debt. And now would you give us the courage and the strength to live in such a way where we demonstrate that the debt's been paid. It's in your great name, Jesus, that we pray. Amen.
You unravel me with a melody. You surround me with a song of deliverance from my enemies until all my fears are gone. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God.
Thanks for joining us for SMCC Online. If you want to be a part of sharing some of this helpful and hopeful content, then we would love it if you would partner with us financially. You can find more information on that by going to smccutah.org/give. Also, man, I would love to connect with you personally, get to meet you, so you can connect with me or any of our pastors by going to our website and going to smccutah.org/nextsteps and clicking that connect button. Next week, we're going to be wrapping up our series in A Journey to Joy. Pastor Paul will be talking with us about what it really looks like to take next steps. I hope to see you online or in person. Take care.